a big part of law enforcement, however, is responding after something bad's already happened. It's just the nature of the system. And so, yeah, we protect, yeah, we serve, but we often get there after this has already happened. And that can be the stressor.
Hey everybody, welcome to Help Is on the Way, a companion podcast to the documentary film The Call, which we are, I have a very special guest with me today. His name is Eldredge. He's a retired sheriff from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we're doing something great. We have some good news. We're announcing we're partnering with a foundation that Van is a board member of, called the Sodality Foundation, and we're partnering with them to actually do a screening in New Mexico June 20th, and we're very excited. Van, thank you so much for joining, and tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us the history. Who's Van?
Thank you, sir. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about your film, the project you guys have going, and the hope that I think it has given to first responders in our community. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I retired 4th of July, 2019, Independence Day. I did pick that as my last date on purpose. Nice. I enjoyed every minute of my career. But I'm excited to be doing other things. And a big project I've been involved in now for almost a year is with a group called the Sodality Foundation. Sodality Foundation was started to help provide resources to first responders in the state of New Mexico, in particular in peer support training and peer support opportunities. The board recognized how valuable that is, and we're looking for ways to provide that. And we recognize, especially in rural New Mexico, there's a shortage of opportunities and funds. So the Sodality Foundation, 501c3, we're a nonprofit, and we raise money throughout the year to get the training and the support to first responders in the state of New Mexico. And so, yeah, your film is integral now to exactly the kind of things we're doing. And I like the partnership that you've allowed us to form, sir. I really appreciate that.
We thank you. You guys came highly recommended with Chief Paul Beers, retired Fire Chief Paul Beers from Rio Rancho, and he's been an amazing contact. He's so critical to this film. He's connected us to so many people who became a part of this project, and it's been amazing. And so I'm grateful that you guys were willing to step up. I know it's been a bit of work on your end to help get this going. I'll give a shout out to Ashley, and it's coming together, and I'm excited. I'm excited to be in Albuquerque on June 20th. I'm excited to shake your hand and say hello and meet you in person for the first time, and everybody with your team. So you can, real quickly, we will do this. You can go to sodalityfoundation.com, correct? Is that correct? It's .com.
Yes.
.com. There is a link in there to donate directly to them. You don't have to do anything, but they do also have a link on their site called The Call Documentary. And you can click on that, and you can purchase tickets if you're in the local area and you'd like to see the film. It hasn't really been screened yet wide, so this is the first opportunity for an audience to sit down and really watch it. So we're really excited to bring it to where it was filmed. I spent two and a half weeks there filming by myself. I was a one-man crew, lighting, mics, cameras, grip, everything. I was doing it all. But I really loved how the community opened their lives to us, let us tell their story, and trusted us. And so it's really great that our team gets to bring it back to New Mexico to screen it there. And it's very important that we did that. So if you're interested, if you want to go, you want to see the film, please go to the Sodality Foundation and click on the link and get some tickets. They are $10. It's a donation. All that money does go directly to the Sodality Foundation. And you can just donate if you're not in the area and you just want to help them out because they do amazing work. Please do so. No more. I won't say that part again, but we appreciate everybody doing this. But we do, if you can make it, we look forward to seeing you and come. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a great night. So what we talk about in the film is we focus on firefighters primarily. That's kind of what we had access to. And I was thinking about it the other day, man. You're the first person outside of the therapy, counseling, and fire departments I think that we've gotten a chance to speak to. So law enforcement. So we did want to bring that aspect into the film, but unfortunately we didn't get the chance to do it. It just didn't work out logistically and everything. So thank you for doing this. It's going to be amazing. I'm really interested to look at it from a perspective we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. But talk to us a little bit about your law enforcement background. I know you've got a very interesting canine unit, I believe. You did some security work. Was it a nuclear facility or nuclear power? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I started actually, my first foray, if you will, into this profession was working for the Department of Energy at a facility here in Albuquerque called Sandia National Laboratories. Okay. I started there in '85. State of New Mexico has a fairly long storied history, if you will, in our nation's development of both nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. And in the mid 80s, kind of the height of the Cold War. And so I grew up here. I'm third generation New Mexican, lifelong resident of Albuquerque. So I was around that particular atmosphere and culture. And so my first step into this kind of work was protecting those assets for our nation. I did that for about 8 years. While I was there, I went to the University of New Mexico, completed a degree in criminal justice, and then started looking at law enforcement as kind of the way I wanted to go. Had some opportunities to join federal law enforcement agencies, but they were wanting me to relocate. At the time I had small children, wanted to stay in the Albuquerque area, so I joined the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. And absolutely the best decision I think I ever made. Extremely rewarding, exciting career. In the bulk of it, yes, I spent at the other end of a dog leash. I was a canine handler for most of my career, which was just fascinating work, and really enjoyed that aspect of it. I got to do a lot of, I will say, really neat, fun things as a deputy sheriff here in New Mexico. I was also a member of our SWAT team. Got to train lots of people. A big part of my career also was teaching and training law enforcement, and in particular, skills that were critical to safely and effectively apprehending violent fleeing felons. I taught firearms for many years. I taught what we call basic empty hand defensive tactics. I taught people how to handcuff and take bad guys to jail. And my goal was to do it as safely and as effectively as possible, and was very fortunate to do that. Got promoted to sergeant and even was able to continue to do those things. I supervised our SWAT team and supervised our canine unit and continued to be utilized in an instructor capacity. I really focused a big part of my career on what I considered to be keeping officers safe, keeping deputies safe. I taught all over the state of New Mexico, and it's a great opportunity. My story also includes a fairly significant critical incident, and that's really what I think got me looking at other aspects of what I call survival for law enforcement officers. In March of 2026, I was the on-duty sergeant, and the first one to the scene of the homicide of Deputy James McGrain, deputy sheriff who was murdered on a car stop here in Bernalillo County. Unbeknownst to Deputy McGrain at the time, the truck he'd stopped was being driven by a person wanted for a homicide which had occurred a few months prior. And that person shot and killed Jimmy and fled the scene. In addition to being the sergeant on duty that night and the first one there, I grew up with Jimmy McGrain. His older sister and I went to school together, kindergarten through the 12th grade. He lived a few blocks from me. His mom and dad and my mom and dad went to church together for many, many years. That's not a unique type of situation in law enforcement and firefighting. I've talked to many, many people since then who've had a critical incident that involved someone they knew, from their neighborhood, from their family, etc. I'm very honored, sir, to be one of your guests on your podcast. In particular, I've watched the podcast with Chief Lynn and Mary, and their stories of personal involvement in grief and tragedy are unfortunately a little bit similar to mine, as is Paul Bierce's. Paul and I have worked together now a little bit, and it's been a great opportunity for me to interact with people like him. After Deputy McGrain was murdered, we spent several weeks, what I'll call a manhunt, looking for the person who had done it. The time I was sergeant of the SWAT team, and we literally, no stone unturned, and no one slept for 2 weeks until we apprehended that person. For law enforcement officers, that aspect of it kept us focused. We had a bad guy to catch, right? And in there, we had a funeral where I eulogized Jimmy. We did a America's Most Wanted kind of a feature. We were trying to get tips. All that went on, and what that did was keep us focused. Law enforcement and firefighters, we tend to do better when we're focused on something, and so that aspect, I think, was different maybe than some other critical incidents. Because looking back on it, maybe we could have done some things different for folks, and really that's kind of where my focus is now. The suspect was apprehended. He went to trial. He was convicted, and will spend the rest of his life in prison. And so that aspect has been completed. What I started noticing in really the weeks, months, and years that followed, and hence the title of your documentary, The Call, correct? That incident, that call, whether it's one, like it was for one of your guests on the podcast, a particular death of a child that impacted that firefighter, or a culmination of things, what I've referred to, what I call the collateral damage, what happens to an agency or a group of people after an incident of this magnitude. And Paul Bierce's big focus is suicide prevention, and absolutely a valuable aspect of it. Paul and I have also had lengthy discussions about the other things that may not culminate in that, but may culminate in something else pretty significant. I saw coworkers of Jimmy's whose marriages unfortunately dissolved. One coworker who developed a fairly significant chemical addiction, which resulted in the loss of career. That person's doing something different for a living now. A coworker who chose to leave the agency, leave the state, and go somewhere else, is still doing similar kind of work, but isn't working for our agency anymore. That's what I refer to sometimes is the collateral damage, the impact that this has in the other things in our life. Having trained people to what I call stay safe and keep the community safe was very important to me. And then I recognized the other things that get us. I also had the opportunity, they're a big part of my career as a physical fitness instructor. I'm the guy at the basic academy having cadets do push-ups and run and all that, right? And that's vital, it's important. But if we don't focus on the emotional and psychological aspects, being able to jump tall buildings in a single bound is not going to be completely successful. There's going to be other things that get us. And that's where I took an opportunity to get some other training and go read some other books and meet some other people, and started focusing on now what we call peer support, being there for someone when these things happen. your film talks quite a bit about maybe a stigma, if you will, within our profession of not wanting to ask for help, not reaching out for help because, hey, we're tough, we're strong, we're gonna harden up and just push through all this. And a culture shift is needed. There's a fun banter, if you will, that goes on back and forth between law enforcement and firefighters. Paul Bierce and I have a whole list of jokes that we make about each other. But at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. And really where I do have to give credit where credit is due, having watched now, is the firefighters have done a better job of peer support and collecting their group, their squad, their battalion after a critical incident and checking on each other. We have a lot to learn in law enforcement from our fire partners in that aspect. I recognize that as well. And so Paul and I talk about this quite a bit, and I'm very grateful for him for helping that. The first peer support training type function I went to many years ago was put on by a group of local firefighters and chaplains, and I was blessed to have attended it.
Well, and that's I mean, and it's because it's across the board. First responders have and I don't remember the statistic off the top of my head. They have their risk of suicide ideation, of maybe attempting a suicide is higher than the general population, because like what you talked about, these critical events, and we talk in the film, and the therapists talk about that accumulation, that trauma, you know, one after the other, and maybe you get off one call, you go to the next call, and it's another big. It's not just a ticket. You're not just writing a ticket for a taillight. You're something, traffic accident to whatever, a homicide. Like those things can accumulate over time, and we kind of stumbled into that. Wasn't really initially part of what we were looking to do with the film, but we organically kind of went into that. We wanted to talk about the seriousness that first responders face, and even though we were primarily focused on firefighters, it evolved into this other thing where talking about resiliency, peer-to-peer support programs, next rung, a program that Robert Arrieta from the film is. I try to wear the t-shirts when I can. I don't get an opportunity to wear the shirts I've been given, so I try to wear them on the podcast when I can. So that was a part of the film that kind of organically came. That's why I went out again, because we wanted to talk about this. This is just as important as talking about what the trauma means, what suicide ideation means. But we, talking about what that means from a clinical perspective, a trauma-informed specialist therapist who can talk about these things and break them down. What does that actually mean? We wanted to tell that part of it, but we also wanted to leave it on a hopeful note. And we also wanted to show that the community itself, because these, what you call them, critical events. I'm gonna use that. When a critical event happens, it doesn't just happen to the first responders that show up. It happens to the departments. It happens to the community. A lot of you, like you said, you guys, the men and women in these departments, a lot of them are working in the communities they live in or they grew up in, and so it's one of those things where it was great to see the community itself starting to build these programs. Sodality Foundation, Yoga for First Responders, Yellow Rose, like all these things that we touched in the film, it was great. It's great to see, and I'm so thrilled to partner with you guys, because I think you guys are doing amazing work, and I think our messages are right on point with each other, and it's been amazing. But can you briefly talk on that, about because coming from a law enforcement perspective, what did that incident with Jimmy, if you're comfortable with speaking about it, what did that what kind of, you touched on it a little bit, but what happened to not just your department, but like the community around there? Can you talk a little bit about that? What was the effect that had? Because we sometimes don't think about it, that these ripples go a little bit further out into the community.
We do, you're right. And at the time, it was quite devastating to the community, especially the jurisdiction, the area that Jimmy was working in, or what we call our East Area Command. The community up there was very tight knit. They're very pro first responder, pro law enforcement, pro military kind of a community, and to have lost someone who was in their area was quite impactful. And I will say there was an immediate support. One of the other groups that I'm involved in is what's called the Deputy James McGreen Foundation, and we're also a 501c3. And what we did, because there was such a great outpouring of support, and in particular, many people wanted to donate. Hey, what can we do, right? People hear about a tragedy and they offer to help. And so we did start a foundation, and we were able to bring in a group that also provides some training. And that went on because people were generous, and they would show up to our fundraisers and they would donate, and they continued. And I met many people who it physically and emotionally impacted them. They were devastated that something like this could happen in their neighborhood, in their community, right, in their hometown. And that can be cathartic for law enforcement officers and first responders when you do have community members who show up and say, we're so sorry for your loss, thank you for your help. And I do like to continue to point out the people in my community that are very supportive of firefighters and law enforcement, and thank us for what we're doing, and those kind of things are very beneficial. In general, when a law enforcement officer or firefighter shows up on the scene, whatever that is, somebody's not having a good day. That's the reality of it, right? Something's going on in someone's life, and that's tough. So when we do get that return support, that hey, thank you very much for what you're doing kind of thing, it's very beneficial. And there was a huge outpouring of support because it did impact, and it continues to impact. The peer support aspect of things, to me, is what's become invaluable. And you, again, your film, the fact that your film is talking about the hope and the support that a community has, is invaluable to me. We can reach out to each other, but when we know the community has our back, people like you coming into my community, making a documentary, and then wanting to come back and release it is quite inspirational, sir. I will say. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. When the Sodality Foundation approached me for a board opportunity, it was just a kind of revitalization of okay, this is what people out there really want, because really the bulk of the community is supportive of law enforcement, military, firefighters. They really are. That being said, I recognize that law enforcement firefighters are going to reach out to each other first. And that's where the peer support training comes into play. And that's where Sodality comes into play. And that's where fundraising for that, because it is still tough for first responders to reach out for help, but I've recognized they're a little more likely to do it, and reach out to a comrade, so to speak.
And I'm sure for them sometimes, because it's not, I think that's one of the things too, is I learned in my journey of this project. And I think my amazing colleague, Laura Boyd Owen, who directed and edited the film, I think she did a great job of us making sure that on that journey, we were looking at what my old thinking was. Like I was a kid in the 80s. You talked about the 80s working at that. I remember getting under my desk when I was a kid because we do those drills. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, not too far away from Albuquerque, and we had Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. So we were a strategic target to a degree. So that was kind of that shadow of the Cold War did kind of even go down into Arizona as well. But really looking at the journey of what I thought, which first responders are heroes. Like that's not a question. But there was always the thinking of, oh, nothing hurts them. They're heroes. And I had that magical thinking, and seeing these stories and talking to more people and understanding that my way of thinking was wrong, because like you said, you can be the guy who can do 100 pull-ups, but if you're not strong up here, maybe you can't make that jump, or whatever it is you need to do in that moment, because you're not in the moment itself because of whatever. But that was a long-winded way of getting around. I apologize. I apologize for that. But one of the things, I did another podcast with Jackson Williams, who's in the film, a few days ago. And one of the things that they were talking about in that podcast, which I'm interested to discuss with law enforcement, because I know it's starting in the fire department communities, but talking to the recruits, talking to the core members, the ones that are coming up in the training, is that something that's being implemented in law enforcement, talking about these things, resiliency, talking about mental health, talking about these hard conversations, to say, hey, if you have that call that affects you, to like at least reach out to a colleague and be like, whoa, that one hit me, So is that something that's a reality, or is that something that you think law enforcement in your area is still working towards?
I think it's still a work in progress. I'm seeing a whole lot more of it. I know there is a discussion of it in my former agency. I also recognize, and part of the goal of the Sodality Foundation, the greater Albuquerque area, Bernalillo County, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, they do have some resources, a little bit more support than other parts of the state. That's the reality of my state. So yeah, I can say the local agencies are doing a whole lot more of that. Some of the rural agencies I recognize are still struggling. And really, again, part of that does come from when we talk about changing the culture. Law enforcement, military, firefighters are often multi-generational type careers, right? Your parents, your grandparents, your uncles, your brothers, sisters, etc., were maybe in the profession, and now that's what got you into the profession. Not always, but quite a bit. And so some of this breaking of the culture is also because that's the dynamic, right? And so we do need to do more of that. And when I am seeing it, I am very hopeful. This film, I know, is a big part of it. One of the big things I know is being taught is resiliency training, and to me, even more valuable. When we talk about resiliency training, and again, I'm fully supportive of these things, because we're gonna need it. I'll quote one of my favorite kind of celebrity prizefighter heroes, if you will, and it's Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson's quote is, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth."
Yep.
And I use that when I'm talking, because again, we can talk about resiliency. Mike Tyson was the greatest fighters, and you can plan and plan and plan and plan and plan and train and be in the greatest shape, and that's what resiliency training is all about. And then you get punched in the mouth. And the night Jimmy McGrann was murdered, I and some of my comrades got punched in the mouth unlike anything I had ever felt or prepared for. So now what do? Now is when we need to reach out to our coworkers. So the basic academies, yes, to answer your question, they're teaching more resiliency, and even better for me, what I'm seeing is they're teaching the young recruits, watch out for your buddy.
Yeah.
Watch for the signs that they're struggling, and maybe reach out to them even before they reach out to you, because they may not. The culture, again, is I'm just going to tough it out and harden up. So again, my focus is, because I do look back at the collateral damage in my agency, and looking back, hindsight being 2020, I now recognize some things that as a supervisor, as a coworker, as a partner, as a peer, should have seen. Something's not really right. Something's going on. And I think the better we can do now of both resiliency but peer support, buddy checks, call your buddy, and then offer them these other things. Hey buddy, let's go get a cup of coffee. Hey buddy, let's go. I'm an avid outdoor enthusiast as well. Paul Bierce and I both share a love of cycling. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's go for a walk. The Sodality Foundation has been able to provide funding for a retreat facility in northern New Mexico. One of the local groups, and again, I'll throw out to them as a resource, Public Safety Psychology Group, for who Jackson Williams works for as well. PSPG has a retreat facility. Let's go spend a weekend at a cabin in the woods. Kind of an opportunity, and because even those of us that thought we were ready and thought we were resilient and thought we were tough, didn't anticipate how horrendously impactful this whatever that incident is, and it's going to be obviously different for everyone. I can't predict what will impact one particular person. All I can really predict, unfortunately, as the retired guy now, right, is that there will be something's going to be, unfortunately, impactful. And let's reach out to our partners. And so, yeah, it's again my long-winded answer to your question of, am I seeing a effort towards all this? Absolutely, I am. And we're going to keep doing it. But there is some big differences between when I started in the career and now, and the information we're providing young people, definitely, or starting in the career, new people in the career, I should say.
And that, and ideally, and I know everybody, I would assume all departments, I know that Bernalillo County Fire and Rio Rancho, and I assume Albuquerque as well, they're all that idea of starting with the recruits and then keeping that consistent throughout their journey, throughout their careers. And then as they retire and they start to move up leadership, and maybe you're not in the field as much, you're not getting those big, I don't want to say big moments, but you're not going into the rescue baby in the fire, to use a cliche. So I know there's transitions through people's lives and through careers. So I know making sure that the people with leadership is still, Chief Beers, Paul talks about it in the film where he talks about when he became the chief, is like, I got to take care of my teams. Like, that became my priority. It wasn't running into the building anymore. It wasn't jumping in the truck. It was taking care of his teams. And so there, I assume for you, it was a similar role as you started to go up through the ranks, and your role changed. And if you're not just teaching physical, the skills you need physically as a sheriff, to add in that emotional side of it too, that mental health side of it too, I think is huge. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, I guess maybe what I'm asking is, you've said a couple of times that you saw this new need to talk to me a little bit about your personal journey. What was it like? What was one of the first things you said, okay, I'm going to go try and do this specific thing because there's a need and I got to do something here. Is there something specific you can speak to about that?
Yes, and I kind of briefly touched on it a minute ago. One of the deputies that worked for me and was on the squad, and a coworker of Jimmy's, and developed again unfortunately a pretty significant chemical addiction, and it cost him his career. And he and I are still in contact. Again, multi-generation law enforcement officer. And that's when I look back at that one and I think, oh my gosh, I let him down. I missed the signs. I don't want that to happen again. I'm going to seek out education, training, resources. What happened here? And that was for me kind of the turning point of finding these other things. And so I did. Went out and found some other resources and started getting involved in peer support, and recognized too, now that I'm retired, really law enforcement and firefighting, it is a young person's profession. I recognize that at some point these physical aspects are as much as I want to, I'm not going to be able to jump tall buildings in a single bound anymore. Knees and ankles and all that. But I do think I have still the opportunity to go talk to people and about my career and about my story. And I do think there's some people out there who, if I go in and talk to them about this, there's a chance it'll resonate with them.
Mhm.
And so that is a big part of what continues to motivate me. And really, credit to Sodality, Paul Beers, Jackson Williams, your group for pulling me in this direction again. I was retired, Charlie, and I was kind of liking some of the retirements, and I still do.
Yeah.
But I also enjoy the opportunity to talk to people about my story, how it impacted me. I've 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 been to way too many cop funerals,
Mm.
and I don't want to go to any more. And I know there's going to be some more. I can't deny that aspect of it. I also started doing some research and did some data. And in my own agency, I'll just give the what I'll call anecdotal data. But in my 26 years, um, I lost two coworkers to gunfire. Jimmy McGrain was one of them. Bill Sobravo was the other. I lost two coworkers to car wrecks, sir. Um, Dean Mieta and Angelique Garcia. But in my career, I lost three coworkers to suicide. The numbers speak volumes. You're the other aspect is, the leading cause of death for law enforcement officers in this country is still coronary artery disease, and suicide's right behind it. So that being said, we're taking ourselves out. It isn't the bad guy. Yeah, bad guys are still after us, and yeah, car wrecks are still going to happen, and all those other things, right? They are, but is a greater likelihood something that we are doing to ourselves, whether we're not taking care of ourselves physically. We're again, shift work invites crummy nutritional habits and crummy physical fitness habits. We say we're going to go to the gym, but we don't because we picked up a double. We say we're going to eat better, but we don't because we just grab whatever at the drive-through. And so we don't take care of ourselves physically, and we sure as heck don't address our emotional needs. And that those numbers that I throw out there, again, those don't count. Again, post-retirement. I've been retired almost 7 years now, sir, and I love every minute of it. I joke sometimes with my coworkers. I worked for 26. I'd like to get 26 back. And the numbers just don't speak to that. Too many people in our profession don't make it 5 years after retirement. Because again, whether it's physical health or grief, stress, and trauma. And I don't like those numbers. I don't like those numbers at all. There's nothing about those numbers I like. Your film gives me hope. Your film tells me we can shift those numbers. We can do something about it. We can help these people not just survive their 20 to 25 year career, but to continue to thrive.
Yeah.
One of your guests also talked about that aspect. Chief Flynn talked about he wants happy, healthy, productive employees. That makes a difference. I still live and work in Bernalillo County, a part-time gig, and with Sodality, I want the firefighters and law enforcement officers in my community to be effective and healthy. That to me is a responsibility that we have as well as a former employee, as a boss at one point in time. And the way Chief Flynn said it was amazing. Where he and I also. I've seen this. Most of the people I know that join firefighter or law enforcement, it was a career they probably thought about for a very long time. Maybe they grew up wanting to do it, right?
Yeah.
All I ever wanted to do when I was a kid growing up, kind of thing. When something in the career causes them to lose that opportunity, maybe it doesn't go quite as far as suicide, which is the worst it can get, right? But when I hear about someone who quit the job that they wanted to do their whole life, the career they wanted, that also to me is upsetting. You took what was your life dream, and we didn't give you the support to continue doing it or continue to do it in a successful way and enjoy it. that also is something I want to focus on. I'm not going to say every day of the job is fun. It's not going to be. I get that,
Yeah.
but it's a challenging, rewarding, exciting career. And the other thing one of your guests talked about is what we call burnout, right? The people that just they burn out. They're not doing it anymore. I don't like hearing those stories. And again, your film and the aspects of all that give me hope. Absolutely, they do. I see where we're definitely moving in a better direction than we were 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago when I started this career, where you just were counting the days till you finished. Well, that's not. Who wants to be that person, right? Come on.
No, and you want those support structures and having those support structures in place so that it's a daily, or when it's needed, you have. I think it's I believe it was Gary from the Bernalillo County Fire Department was talking about, and he called them like touch points, like where the resources are there, you're aware of them when you need them, and then having that, breaking through that stigma to say, hey, I'm struggling right now. Let me call next rung. Let me reach out to my buddy. Let me reach out to whatever that might be, whatever your comfort level is at that time. And then I think a lot of people through success, if they start to see like, I don't want to say, I was going to say reward, but not if they see benefit to using these and then saying, oh, wow, I feel better about that. I feel better. I'm not perfect, but it still bothers me, but I'm feeling better. I'm feeling like you said, I can go to work tomorrow and I'm feeling good about, going to work instead of it being burnout or stress, and that stress, what stress does to your body, what it does to your heart when you talk about coronary issues. And so these things add up. They're accumulate. It's these traumas and these accumulations over time, over the many years and the many situations. I have one more quick question, and then I'll kind of just throw it open to you to finish with however you see fit. If we haven't talked about anything that you feel is important, and I don't want to mean this as a competition in any way, shape, or form, because I know there's a little bit of a rivalry. You spoke to it earlier, but I know Robert says in the film, "Trauma is trauma is trauma," and it's very true. You don't have to be a first responder. You don't have to be an infantryman and abroad to have trauma in your life, but what kind of different situations does law enforcement see that maybe we didn't really have a chance to discuss that you would have found valuable in the film if we were able to do that? Like, Robert talks about the child situation. Paul talks about a suicide in his department. What kind of other things that maybe outside of fire department that law enforcement maybe see that we didn't really have a chance to talk about or discuss, would you like to kind of talk to people about that law enforcement deals with that maybe firefighters don't see it as often or at all, maybe?
Great question. Two of the biggest stressors that come from the law enforcement career are really, quite frankly, because of our criminal justice system and the nature of it. And again, as a citizen first, I value our constitutional rights. I truly do, and I believe in our criminal justice system. I also recognize that in America, law enforcement officers cannot take action until something's already happened. That can be enormously stressful. When you see that this particular person in your community is not doing good things. They're doing bad things. Sometimes having to sit back and wait for them to do bad things before you can intervene is enormously stressful. And then the aspect of you do intervene, you take appropriate action, you take them to jail, you write up a report, you take them before the judge, and the justice dispensed, if you will, is not what you as an officer would think would be appropriate, because you were there that night. By the time it goes to trial months later, criminal suspect has been cleaned up. His lawyer put him in a cheap suit, walked him in before the judge, and again, this is my version. The person gets a slap on the wrist, right, and they're right back out doing bad things to bad people again. That is a stressor I don't know that other professions and firefighters deal with. So yeah, we do still have car wrecks. We do still respond to the unfortunate aspects of something physically taking a life, car crashes, drowning, all that goes on. One of the big stressors when I talk to cops is this aspect of I did everything right and the judge still gave them 6 months probation or whatever. That can be tough. And you tend to, in law enforcement and in firefighting as well, but in law enforcement in particular, you tend to respond to the same places quite a bit. Most of our population, sir, is really quite law-abiding and they're good people. And then there's this small percentage who, for a variety of reasons, we get into socioeconomic data, tends to commit a lot of the crime, and it can be also, unfortunately, generational. One of the things that got me thinking about retirement, besides the time in and my family stuff, but was responding to the scene and arresting someone whose father I had arrested 18 years prior. And I'm now recognizing, oh my goodness, all that hard work I did early on in my career and taking these people to jail. And there's going to be some generational aspects of crime. And that can be one of those unmentioned stressors, looking up and going, oh my gosh, has all my efforts been valuable? I'll give another analogy. When I started teaching, and I would have new recruits, and I would often ask them that prototypical, so, why did you join law enforcement, right? And they would often give what I would call the correct textbook answer. To serve and protect, sir. I want to serve and protect. And that's a valuable answer, and that is absolutely what we're doing. A big part of law enforcement, however, is responding after something bad's already happened. It's just the nature of the system. And so, yeah, we protect, yeah, we serve, but we often get there after this has already happened. And that can be the stressor. So again, my long-winded answer to your great question. No. Thank you for kind of the difference. And then to go to court months later and the judge go, 6 months probation or whatever, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, wow.
I can't imagine, and that's something I hadn't even really thought of. And you don't, like you said, most people, besides some silliness when I was a teenager, nothing major, having a sheriff tell me to not do that again, I didn't really see much in the way of needing a firefighter or law enforcement around me. But when you need them, we were in a car accident during COVID near Sedona, Arizona, and you're so grateful when those men and women show up and are checking on you and taking your, you're so, you realize sometimes how helpless you are. Again, you can be the biggest, toughest person but your truck goes down a mountain, you're going to be shook. You're going to be shook. So so you realize you want people, you want those people there, and you want them physically and mentally prepared to be there for you if needed, or somebody else who might need them. So I'm very appreciative of it. But is there anything else I feel like we covered quite a bit in this podcast, and I'm grateful once again for you bringing the first law enforcement perspective to it. Is there anything that I just completely whiffed on that you think is something we should discuss? It could be about Sodality Foundation, law enforcement lifestyle, anything that you think, whatever in the community that maybe something else we maybe didn't discuss that you'd like to address before we wrap it up.
No, I think we did a nice job of touching on the things that I was hoping to be able to address. Again, great film.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to see it in a collective environment with a group of people and watch their impact. And it was powerful. I very, very powerful, sir. That's the best adjective I can come up with. And I know that power will be felt even more so in a room full of other people. I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Again, really grateful for the partnership with Sodality, because I do think that Sodality and your film are the path forward for these things that we have discussed. I really do. Projects like this are are working. I believe they're working. I'm seeing it. I value it. I know other people value it. And again, I'm honored to be included in this group of people who you've had in your film and on your podcast, because they are just great people doing great things, not just in my state, but all over the country. Meeting people via your forum from other parts of the country is exciting, really exciting to me. It really is.
Yeah, and it was
Appreciate it.
important. Oh, of course, and thank you for being a part of this. Thank you to Sodality Foundation, and it's just as part of what the idea behind this podcast was that my colleague and I, Laura, we didn't have time to put all these things in the film because at some point you've got to stop rolling the cameras. You've just got to start producing it, or you're just 10 years down the road and you still haven't done anything. So we had to have a moment where we said no, we couldn't do any more logistically. So the podcast was our way to give back to the community, tell these other stories that we didn't get a chance to. And I'm grateful for you being a part of it. I'm grateful for you guys being amazing partners on this project, this event. It's blowing my mind how quickly it's coming together, and I'm looking forward to meeting everybody in person. I'm looking forward to being in that room. You'll probably see me in the back nervously walking because I'm that person that, I'm the creative, so I've got to be like on nerves the whole time while people are watching your work. But yeah, thank you so much, Van, and keep doing what you're doing. The films, our team's can always be there for you guys to help you out in whatever we can do. I don't see this partnership being over on June 21st, so we'll keep going. So, but we appreciate everything, and you have a wonderful day. I know it's still early there in Albuquerque, and over here in Portugal, the day's wrapping up. I'm gonna go make some dinner. So, but I appreciate you taking the time, and if you guys need anything, please reach out. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Great talking to you. Great talking to you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Help is on the Way.